In 2007, I had the wonderful opportunity to be on sabbatical for 6 months. Part of that time I spent at a couple of theology update programs in Europe. It was the first time in 35 years that I did not have responsibility for helping to celebrate the Holy Week services. When Palm Sunday came, I found myself visiting Paris with a priest friend from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who was in the theology program with me. Palm Sunday morning, we went to the church of Saint Gervais at Protes, which is the home for the Community of Jerusalem, a monastic community with dual houses, one for men and one for women. The church is famous for its beautiful liturgies. We got there early, and after finding some good seats where we could lean against a pillar since the stools had no backs, I looked across the aisle, and of all things, there was Sister Julienne Farrington, a sister of St. Mary of Namur from Kenmore, New York, which is just a few miles away, who was working at their mother house in Belgium. We said hello to one another and later went out for lunch, but I digress. The reason for this story is that in France on Palm Sunday, they don't use the palms that we have here, the ones from Texas, these yellow palms. They don't use these things. They use something that's, well, it's very a little shrubbery-like. It's very green and leafy, and they sell it for a few cents at tables outside the church. Now, I don't know anything about plants, but I thought it kind of looked like boxwood. Later, we saw people all over the city carrying these same greens. That evening, Father Mike and I were going to dinner. We passed a very famous church called Saint-Germain-des-Prés. I said to Mike, let's see if we can get in. It's probably locked, but let's try. We were surprised to find the door unlocked and the church filled with people attending an evening mass for Palm Sunday. Standing in the vestibule was a tall priest dressed in an alb and stole. And on the wall next to him was a large sign with the schedule for all of the Holy Week services. And the sign was decorated with the same greenery that we've been seeing all day. In my halting French, I said to him, "Excusez-moi, mon père, parlez-vous anglais?" He looked at me and answered, "Yes, I do. I lived in Canada for 8 years." I pointed to the sign and I asked him, "Can you tell me what this is?" meaning the greenery. He looked at me and thinking I was talking about the Holy Week sign, said, "Are you a Christian?" I don't think I had ever been asked that question in my life. Father Mike said I should have answered, "On occasion, I try to be." 2 footnotes. That priest, Father Jean-Marie Vincent, and I became friends during the 8 years, especially during the 8 years that he was pastor of the French church in Washington, D.C. And he's even been here to St. Joe's a couple of times. And for you gardeners out there, I eventually found out that the greenery is called japonica. Now, the point of this long story is this. Has anyone ever asked you, are you a Christian? How would they know? How could they tell? What identifies you as a Christian? Years ago in high school religious education classes, we used to play a game. If you were on trial for being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? Let's think about identities. What are they? Where do they come from? What do they mean? Well, I think our first identity comes from our family. A newborn begins to learn his or her name and then learns names to call the people they see most frequently, perhaps not by name, but by role, mommy, daddy. Then those others in the house who are brothers and sisters called with their names that sometimes are pronounced so badly, but they stay with them for the rest of their lives. Eventually, the family name is learned and an identity begins to emerge. The next identity comes when we go off to school. In school, we begin to create identities that probably stay with us for the rest of our lives. Perhaps we're the smart one, or the smart aleck, the athlete, the artist, the one who's good at math or nowadays good at technology. These strengths begin to emerge and people see us that way, and they may even determine our future careers. Later in life, other identities come along: parent, spouse, grandparent, grumpy or good neighbor. We grow into or out of these multiple identities, these identities that determine the image of who we are, what we do, how we live, and what is important to us in life. But what about our identity as a Christian? Would it be apparent from what you do, how you live, what is important in your life? Today we begin celebrating Holy Week and the events which give us our identity as Christians, the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. These events that happened almost 2,000 years ago are not just ancient history. They are the events that give us our identity as daughters and sons of God. They are the events that give us the task of building up God's kingdom in the hearts of others. They are the events that unite us to Jesus Christ and give our lives their purpose, their direction, their meaning. As St. Paul said to the Corinthians, always, wherever we may be, we carry with us in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus, too, may always be seen in our body. This is Holy Week. May you live it and live every week in such a way that no one will ever have to ask you, are you a Christian?